There were 43 paying spectators. That is the reported attendance at Harry's main charity event, a wheelchair basketball game at the 2025 Invictus Games in Vancouver. 43 people actually purchased tickets for the one project that was meant to demonstrate his ability to create something genuine outside of the monarchy. Additionally, about 100 more bodies were brought in by organisers and gathered around Harry and Meghan Markle for pictures, according to investigative biographer Tom Bower. Produced and staged, a crowd created more for the camera than for the cause. Give that picture some time to settle. A space built to accommodate thousands, played by injured veterans who sacrificed parts of their bodies for their nations. This sport is based on bravery and selflessness, and 43 ticket holders arrived. Like extras on a movie set, about 100 more were herded into position. The athletes, the wheelchair basketball, and the pain they went through to get to that court were all real. They were surrounded by performance. By the end of this, you will have a clear understanding of how the world's most famous couple went from a reported $100 million Netflix deal, a $20 million Spotify contract, representation by Hollywood's most powerful talent agency, friendships with the Beckhams, Oprah Winfrey, and Elton John, to a wheelchair basketball game where they had to bust people in to fill the frame. And you will comprehend it as a recorded sequence rather than gossip or tabloid overreach. A series of incidents that include names, dates, internal grievances, and one particularly memorable Zoom call that a Spotify executive claims is among his best stories, which he has yet to share with the public. Before we get there, though, I must tell you about the Shield. There was a man in Hollywood whose whole job it was to prevent any bad press about Meghan Markle from being published. Every single story you have read about Meghan's career setbacks came from a man whose phone calls editors actually answered, and as soon as he left. That isn't a metaphor, it's a timeline. Additionally, the timeline begins with a book. Tom Bower published his second investigation into the Duke and Duchess of Sussex in March of 2026. Just the title conveys the mood: deceit, power, betrayal, and struggle for the royal family's future. I understand now that there will be another royal book, another headline cycle, and another week and a half of content before the next event. However, Bower is not a palace gossip columnist who recycles anonymous tips and blind items. Before anyone else was prepared to publish it, this man revealed Robert Maxwell's pension fraud. While Gordon Brown was still Prime Minister, he used sourced documentation to demolish his political mythology. Bower's standard, which he has stated clearly, is that he has excellent attorneys, and above all, he ensures that his writing is accurate. 80 separate sources were used to create his 22-page book on the Sussexes' Revenge. 80 different people are willing to talk to a biographer who is known for being almost surgically thorough, either on or off the record. Therefore, it is important to carefully consider the Sussex team's response when the 226 follow-up contains allegations that are so personally damaging and commercially specific that they were forced to make a formal public statement. It was referred to as a deranged conspiracy. Take a moment to consider that phrase. It is not a denial when someone publishes verified, sourced claims, and your official response is to call the entire piece a deranged conspiracy. A true denial claims that the date is inaccurate. A true denial asserts the absence of the document. In a true denial, a specific factual error is identified and corrected on the record. Instead, they provided a tone argument and a characterization. As is the case with almost every investigative biographer who has ever published reliable work about a public figure, they claimed that Bauer had never met them. Bauer also never had a conversation with Robert Maxwell. Did not lessen the reality of the pension fraud. That defence's math just doesn't work. This is the section that the majority of people are ignoring. They told you which of the book's claims they deemed dangerous by publicly reacting and releasing a formal statement. It would have been wiser to remain silent. A news cycle dies when there is silence. A signal flare is a formal response. This one landed, and it landed hard enough that Bauer himself noted the irony. The book shot to the top of Amazon as a result of their public outcry. They turned into the marketing division of the very inquiry they sought to undermine. What exactly is contained within these pages, then, to justify such a response? Allow me to guide you through it. The actual documented claims in the relevant order, not the tabloid summary. This is where the story's true architecture starts. Meghan Markle signed a contract with William Morris Endeavour in April of 2023. That name might not register if you are not in the entertainment industry. William Morris Endeavour, however, is more than just a talent agency. It is Hollywood's most influential representation company. Ari Emanuel, who personally represents Dwayne Johnson and Mark Wahlberg, is in charge of the agency, and this relationship is crucial. Winfrey, Oprah. Hiring a publicist is not the same as signing with William Morris Endeavour. It is comparable to purchasing a private army. Furthermore, a number of industry insiders have made it clear what William Morris Endeavour's main role for Meghan was. It had nothing to do with negotiating brand deals or securing movie roles. Press suppression served as a shield and was the main purpose. Negative stories about you encounter a barrier that they would not otherwise encounter when you have Ari Emanuel on your side. Publications reevaluate. Editors make phone calls that they wouldn't typically make, because the person you are writing about is represented by someone who has access to half of the industry's A-list talent. The cost of running a critical story increases. The whole point was the shield. This is what transpired after that. Additionally, keep an eye on the dates because they are crucial. Meghan allegedly threw what internal sources called a fit around Thanksgiving of 2023 because she felt the agency wasn't paying enough attention to her during the holiday. Then, in January of 2024, she called for a meeting. According to sources, she went into that meeting anticipating formal strategic presentations that were described as decks and plans. Deliverables that are more appropriate for a consultancy than a talent agency. Ari Emanuel was done with her after that, according to several independent insiders. William Morris Endeavour was unquestionably not working on Meghan's personal business going forward, according to a second source who had first-hand knowledge of the agency's operations. This contradiction ought to make your ears perk up. William Morris Endeavour openly denied that their relationship had changed. Any change was openly denied by the Sussex camp. Up until the beginning of 2026, both sides insisted that the representation remained intact. It stated that she was represented. There was never a formal announcement of departure. However, there were no active deals being pursued on her behalf behind that public facade. Since January of 2023, there had been no meetings, only her name was used to represent her. A client on paper. but in reality, she has no agency. And the observation that unites all subsequent stories was made by a Hollywood insider. On background, this person stated that if William Morris Endeavour had continued to actively look after Meghan, the Variety article about her fallout with Netflix would never have been published. Go back and read that. In January of 2024, the shield fell, and every single unfavourable story that has surfaced since then, the conflicts at Netflix, the demise of her lifestyle brand, the surge of employee departures, ran through the open window that opened as soon as that shield fell. It's not a coincidence. That is a time-stamped cause and effect. And I want you to consider the implications of each public declaration made by the Sussex camp during that time. Each denial, every reassurance that everything was proceeding as planned. Each well-crafted statement from a spokesperson about exciting ongoing projects. All of this occurred during a time when the individual under discussion had no active legal representation, no ongoing transactions, and no agency acting on her behalf. The private reality and the public story had drastically diverged. Furthermore, neither side was prepared to acknowledge it first. In my opinion, the most illuminating dynamic in the entire narrative is the discrepancy between what was being said and what was actually occurring, because it indicates that the brand has taken precedence over the company. Actual momentum had been replaced by the appearance of momentum. Additionally, once that substitution begins, it only accelerates in one direction. However, Hollywood did not originate the practice of controlling relationships until they become problematic. It began much earlier, and Meghan's closest friends were the ones who initiated it. Prince Harry and David Beckham first became acquainted in 2022. By the time the Beckhams were 2018, their friendship had grown to the point where they were invited to the royal wedding at Windsor Castle. Victoria Beckham had personally contributed to Frogmore Cottage's interior design. This was not a friendship with a famous person. The Beckhams were steadfastly in Meghan's corner, and this was a sincere, multi-year personal friendship between two of the world's most famous families. This is what Tom Bower recorded in his House of Beckham investigation. Meghan gave an order during the 28th Invictus Games, which took place in the same year as the wedding and while Victoria was assisting with home decor. It was forbidden to take pictures of Harry standing with David Beckham. It was forbidden to take or share pictures of the two men together. According to several accounts, David Beckham was genuinely perplexed. It wasn't until much later that he discovered Meghan herself was the original source of the exclusion order. The reasoning is also included in Bower's reporting. She didn't want Beckham or his wife Victoria to compete with her in the media. Take a moment to sit with that. They were invited to the wedding by her. Victoria offered to help her decorate her house. However, it was unacceptable that David Beckham's face next to Harry's could divert even a single camera angle from Meghan during a public event. The line was that. Then came the accusation that caused the friendship to blow up. According to reports, Meghan accused Victoria of leaking information about her to the British press during a heated phone call with David Beckham. According to several accounts, David Beckham was enraged. Kinsey Schofield, a royal correspondent, also verified the truth. It was not Victoria, never Victoria, but rather a salon receptionist with, in her words, loose lips. The accusation was false, clearly false, and verifiable. However, the friendship had already been ruined by the time the truth was revealed. And what is David Beckham's current situation? He has stated in public that he always says yes when the Prince of Wales asks him to do something. Neutrality is not that. That's a man who had an experience, weighed the implications, and made a decision. Furthermore, I believe that both of us are aware of the side on which the accusations prove to be unfounded. There is more to the Beckham story than meets the eye. It serves as the model. Invite someone in, accept their generosity, make use of their social capital, and remove them as soon as their presence poses a threat to yours for even a small portion of the public's attention. Accuse them of disloyalty if they refuse to be removed. Additionally, if the accusation proves to be false, it should never be corrected, because by then the relationship has ended and the story has moved on. Keep an eye out for that template. It's going to happen again. However, a false and socially harmful accusation against a friend. A formal document filed by an insider is what is structurally harmful and truly has institutional and legal ramifications. Furthermore, most people are unaware that the document was filed 4 years earlier. Jason Knauf, October 2018. You should care about that name. He served as Meghan's personal secretary for communications. Not a critic, not a journalist, and not someone with a preconceived notion. Prince Harry personally asked this man to assist Meghan in writing the now famous private letter to her father, Thomas Markle. A reliable insider by all standards. The individual closest to the machinery that created and preserved Meghan's public persona. 2 months after contributing to the letter's drafting, Knauf formally emailed Simon Case, Prince William's private secretary at the time. The Human Resources Department of Buckingham Palace was copied. This is what was stated in that email. Knauf wrote on the record that he was extremely worried about the Duchess's ability to intimidate 2 personal assistants into leaving the home during the previous 12 months. The Duchess appeared determined to have someone in her sights at all times, he wrote. He claimed that she was actively trying to undermine the confidence of a particular employee by bullying them. He referenced numerous accounts from individuals who had seen inappropriate conduct. Knauf then penned the sentence that ought to make you shiver. He asked if principals are covered by the household policy on harassment and bullying. Go over that again. He wasn't just reporting particular occurrences. He was writing to the Human Resources Department to inquire as to whether the regulations governing behaviour at work in the royal household even applied to his employer. That is not a personal grievance complaint. After a difficult week, that is not a disgruntled employee venting their frustrations. That's a question from someone who already knows the answer, but they're still documenting it because the situation is intolerable. Here is the institutional response, which is where I need you to pay close attention to the framing. In March 2021, 3 years after the complaint was filed, Meghan's official response was given through a spokesperson. As someone who has been the victim of bullying herself, the Duchess is saddened by this most recent assault on her character. Have you noticed what transpired there? In a single sentence, a formal human resources complaint filed by her own communications secretary, a man the royal family trusted enough to include in the most private correspondence, was described as an assault on a victim of bullying. The accuser turned into the defendant. The most recent attack was the documented complaint, and because of what we know happened next, the question of whether the rules apply was never addressed in public. According to reports, Harry asked Knauf to drop the complaint. About a month later, Knauf quit and started working for Prince William. The most knowledgeable adverse witness was the most reliable insider. He crossed the palace wall with his expertise, his records, and his professional standing. And the conclusions of the internal inquiry into those claims conducted by Buckingham Palace? It is still sealed, never made public. The results of that investigation will probably never be known to the general public. However, the path taken by the man who filed it reveals exactly how seriously the organisation took his report. Because corporate money does not function on emotion, this is the point at which the contracts begin to speak. Return on investment, deliverables, and performance metrics are the foundation of corporate finance. Furthermore, it is not unlucky when several businesses independently come to the same conclusion regarding the same client within the same timeframe. That's information. Harry and Meghan sign a contract with Spotify at the age of 22. $20 million is the reported value of the 3-year contract. The podcast series' stated goal is to tell stories using a variety of voices and viewpoints. Over the course of that contract, what was really delivered? Archetypes is a single series with 13 episodes. After a solitary holiday special, there is silence. The agreement formally expires on June 16, 223. That same day, a man by the name of Bill Simmons makes a statement on his own podcast that goes on to become the entertainment industry's most frequently cited critique of the Sussex brand. Simmons oversaw Spotify's podcast innovation and monetization division. This man created The Ringer and sold it to Spotify for $196 million. He is as familiar with content economics as a surgeon is with anatomy. He doesn't write gossip columns. He is not a royal analyst. He is a man who makes a living by assessing content companies. One word summed up his verdict: grifters. On a podcast that the whole industry listens to, he referred to them as the grifters on the record, at full volume. Then he said something even more revealing. One night he said he should get wasted and share the details of a Zoom call he had with Harry. Harry made a specific call and made a specific pitch regarding a podcast concept. Simmons still hasn't shared what he believes to be one of his best stories with the public. He claimed that before he can bring himself to share it, he needs alcohol. That's not the kind of person who gets easily agitated over a poorly performing business relationship. That is someone who saw something particular, something that showed how the Sussexes truly handle these transactions, and who is carefully deciding when and how to use that knowledge. There is a story like that somewhere, and it sits in the centre of this whole story like an unexploded device. In the meantime, Netflix's trajectory is so similar to Spotify's that you would think someone had copied the assignment if you were to place the two timelines side by side. $100 million was reportedly exchanged. The first documentary series was the first to reach the top of the platform's charts, but it did so solely due to its direct criticism of the British royal family. It wasn't the storytelling, production values, controversy, or follow-up that attracted viewers. According to one industry analysis, projects produced no major splash. Netflix made an equity investment in Meghan's lifestyle company. After that, Netflix completely abandoned that brand. In the summer of 2025, the initial production agreement was subtly reduced from an overall deal to a first-look arrangement. In July of 2025, the agreement ended without being renewed. With Love, Meghan was a lifestyle programme that ran for 2 seasons. There has been no announcement of a 3rd season. The pattern is the same. Sign large, make big promises, deliver little, and place the blame elsewhere. Go to the next contract and quietly leave. The financial calculations are always the same, and I believe the cheque writers have finally begun comparing notes. This is what occurs when 3 different companies in the same industry independently come to the same conclusion. It ceases to be about a single bad deal. Due diligence becomes crucial. Every prospective investor, prospective partner, and brand contemplating an association makes the same calculation. After examining the results of Spotify, Netflix, and William Morris Endeavour, they ask themselves a very straightforward question. What knowledge do those 3 organisations possess that I do not? And anyone who is willing to read it can find the answer more and more in the public record. The warning label is the track record, and it is growing longer. Now, I need you to take a moment away from the contracts and corporate collapses, because beneath every executive who discreetly left this story and every deal that ended without renewal, there is a human story that belongs to a woman who has never discussed it in public and who, according to those who know her, still finds it difficult. Jessica Mulroney is her name. Meghan's closest friend was her. Long before anyone outside of a Suits fan forum knew Meghan Markle's name, a sincere friendship was formed in Toronto. It was neither a celebrity acquaintance nor a strategic networking connection. Meghan was introduced to powerful Canadian social circles by Jessica. Meghan's clothes were styled by her. Meghan trusted her with the personal, late-night details of her life that were never revealed in an interview. The unscripted conversations that take place after 11 o'clock at night, where you say things you wouldn't say on camera. Additionally, Jessica Mulroney's children served as the bridesmaids and page boys at Meghan's wedding in May of 2018, the most widely publicised royal wedding of a generation. I need you to realise how important that choice is. As a networking gesture, you don't invite someone's kids to your wedding. Unless a woman is the person you trust the most in the world, you do not give her children the rings and flowers. On the most important day of your life, that is the most intimate personal position you can give another person. In June of 2020, 2 years later, Jessica Mulroney was embroiled in a social media controversy. During a public argument with a lifestyle influencer, she was accused of displaying white privilege. Almost immediately, her TV appearances were cancelled. In a matter of days, her public career fell apart. She was going through one of the most difficult and vulnerable periods of her adult life, and Meghan publicly severed all ties right away. Here's where you might want to give it a chance. Perhaps the friendship had already begun to wane. Perhaps there was reciprocal distance. Perhaps this is just 2 busy individuals in different nations drifting apart, as people do occasionally. But take a look at the calendar. The Black Lives Matter movement peaked globally in June of 2020. Meghan was making a concerted effort to establish herself as an American racial justice activist. In real time, her entire brand was undergoing a complete repositioning that would define her post-royal American persona. Additionally, her best friend had recently become embroiled in a racial dispute. Jessica Mulroney was more than just emotionally uncomfortable. It was strategically necessary to cut her. And, in my opinion, the most subtly heartbreaking aspect of the whole narrative is what happened to Jessica afterward. A confidant gave the following account of her experience. She was subjected to extreme suffering in 2020 and has gone through a difficult period ever since, watching everything play out in the media with false information about her and being totally powerless to react. I am unable to reply because Jessica Mulroney, the person with years' worth of confidential conversations, private information shared behind closed doors, and information never intended for public disclosure, has remained utterly silent. According to people with direct knowledge of the matter, Meghan is acutely aware of the silence and the potential consequences if it breaks. Publishers have been offering seven-figure sums for Jessica's memoir, according to an insider who told media outlets. Jessica is the woman who held the flowers, gave her kids to stand next to Meghan at the altar, and was abandoned at the precise moment her existence turned into a liability for the brand. That friendship did not end. The relationship in question was liquidated. We are far past the point of embarrassment or negative press cycles, so allow me to show you what all of this actually costs in terms of commerce. We deal with documented, quantifiable, structural collapse. The trademark should come first. Meghan's application to register American Riviera Orchard as a protected trademark was denied by the US Patent and Trademark Office in September of 2024. The name alludes to a specific geographic area, namely the vicinity of her hometown of Montecito, California. Additionally, geographic descriptors cannot be registered as brand names under US trademark law. Go back and read that. She was creating a whole lifestyle empire. All of these products, jams, teas, wine, honey, cake mix, and flour sprinkles, were tied to a brand name that was never legally protected. Before committing to the name, someone either failed to perform a basic trademark search or did so, got the results, and continued. For a business operation at this level, either explanation is ineligible. The rebranding to As Ever in February 2025 was not a creative development. It was a brand makeover disguised as a legal emergency. From the beginning, the foundation had been flawed. Now, keep an eye on staff departures, as the numbers alone reveal a narrative that cannot be overshadowed by a press release. Since 2018, there have been 18 senior departures. That is not a problem with human resources. That is not the typical turbulence of a startup trying to establish itself. Professionals in related fields are quick to spot that pattern and discuss it in private. After 3 months in 2024, Josh Kettler, the Chief of Staff, resigned. For 3 months. He claimed that he was uncomfortable with certain aspects of the role. A Chief of Staff position typically lasts 3 to 5 years. It's not a career move to wait 3 months. It's an escape for 3 months. On December 26, 2025, Meredith Maines, the Chief Communications Officer, submitted her resignation. James Holt, the Archwell Foundation's Executive Director, resigned on December 29, 2025, 3 days before the year ended. Within 72 hours of one another, the two most senior members of the Sussex communications and organisational structure left. Helena Chard, a royal analyst, put it bluntly. She described Maines as a well-known communications expert who would undoubtedly be defending her own reputation against what Chard described as the potentially harmful and unpredictable behaviour of the Sussex. Chard then made an observation that, in my opinion, sums up every professional departure in this file. According to her, a communication strategy is only effective if everyone follows the plan. She wasn't criticising the tactic. She claimed that the principal was not adhering to it. That the person whose brand they were hired to oversee was controlling the people who were hired to do so. That someone above them was making unilateral decisions that went against the agreed-upon strategy, which was causing the communications team to lose internal arguments they should have been winning. And this is the cultural relic that surfaced within the organisation years before the business world caught up. The phrase Sussex Survivors Club was first used, half in jest, by former palace employees. Tabloid headline writers did not come up with that phrase. The individuals who worked closest to them created it, and it continues to attract new members. What does that mean for us? Allow me to repay each thread I've started. The Shield. Meghan Markle was given a press suppression machine by Ari Emanuel and William Morris Endeavour that worked just as well as any Hollywood corporate communications operation. The protective barrier vanished when the relationship allegedly broke down in January 2024, and all of the negative stories that had been suppressed came out at the same time. Variety's report on Netflix's conflicts, employee departures, and brand failures was released during the open window. The shield was structural rather than supplemental, and the flood came right away after it fell. The paper. The most institutionally significant piece of evidence in this story is still Jason Nauf's formal complaint from October 2018. Harry personally selected a reliable insider who formally questioned whether Meghan was subject to workplace bullying and harassment policies. The results of the investigation were never made public. Nauf departed and started working for William right away. Meghan's team reframed the complaint. The institutional record was sealed, and Nauf's query about whether the rules apply to principals has yet to receive a public response. The companions. Photographs of David and Victoria Beckham were prohibited. He was accused of press leaks that were linked to a salon receptionist, and he eventually lost his supporters. Given the most personal role at the wedding, Jessica Mulroney was cut right away when her presence became a brand liability. She was kept silent by the tacit understanding that she had confidential information that the Sussexes could not afford to have made public. We do not have her number. We simply do not. The Clooneys, Oprah Winfrey, Elton John and Gina Torres, Meghan's former castmate on Suits, publicly and amicably stated. Not as a grievance, just as a reality. According to reports, Elton John, one of the most devoted members of the British celebrity community, who remained close to Harry because he genuinely loved Princess Diana, now makes an effort to stay in touch with Meghan as little as possible. This story was summed up in a single sentence by an anonymous source who had first-hand knowledge of its 8-year plot. They benefit from the fact that those who have remained most devoted to them are beneath them. They have disagreements with everyone else. The agreements. Before, the head of podcast monetization referred to them as grifters on the record, Spotify signed a $20 million deal and received 13 episodes as well as a holiday special. After signing a reported $100 million deal, Netflix downgraded the production arrangement, let the deal expire without renewal, and witnessed the collapse of its equity investment in the lifestyle brand. The brand name that served as the foundation for the entire lifestyle empire was rejected by the US Patent and Trademark Office. Since 2018, 18 senior employees have left, including 2 executives who resigned 3 days apart at the end of The Spectator, and a chief of staff who served for 3 months. 43 people paid to watch a wheelchair basketball game at the 2025 Invictus Games. According to reports, 100 more people were brought in and placed around Harry and Meghan for pictures. In order to create the appearance of public interest for his flagship independent event, the man who left behind a centuries-old institution with real infrastructure, staffed embassies, genuine global diplomatic reach, and a billion-dollar brand built over generations needed stage management. Not only is the brand failing, the brand is photographed to appear healthy while being maintained on life support. Then there is Harry, the man who wrote a memoir criticising the way his own brother looked and the personal sorrow of his family. The man who used to attend polo matches by himself, book launches by himself, and charity events where 43 people paid to attend and an additional 100 were driven in to take pictures. Harry left Centrebale, an African charity he co-founded that supports HIV-affected children, in March of 2025. The chief executive, the co-founder, and the board of trustees all left with him. It had been 4 years since Harry had been to the charity. When he returned in October of 2024, he reportedly made an unsuccessful attempt to remove the chair before resigning. One visit 4 years away, an instant attempt at control, and an instant failure. Go out. You can learn everything about the operating model from that sequence. Furthermore, Frogmore Cottage was more than just a residence. Their entire commercial value came from the final tangible link to the organisation. Every brand partnership, Netflix deal and Spotify contract was valued in relation to the Royal Association. The British Crown's titles, access and reflected authority. That property, along with the final concrete rationale for the entire post-royal project, was taken away by King Charles. To become something independent, they broke away from the monarchy. They tried for 6 years, and on a Friday afternoon in June of 2023, Bill Simmons gave the most candid public evaluation of what they truly became on a podcast. A man who had sat across from them during Zoom calls, signed a $20 million contract with them, and observed the operation firsthand. Grifters on the record at full volume, he went on to say that he still hadn't shared one of his best stories, which was from a particular Zoom call involving a particular pitch from Harry. There is a story like that. It is waiting somewhere, and I believe that the one piece of evidence that unifies this whole pattern into a single coherent line is whatever Harry said about it, what he pitched, or what it revealed about how they truly think this works. Every departure, every accusation, every contract that ended without notice, every friend who was fired, every employee who left, and every brand that was staged for pictures all relate to a single operating principle that the people closest to the machine continue to explain in different ways, but with the same meaning. I will therefore leave you with the question that I am unable to respond to. Bill Simmons ultimately chooses to open the bottle that he has been carrying in his back pocket for the evening. On that Zoom call, what did Harry say? Will anyone who has been paying attention be surprised when that story eventually comes to light, or will it simply confirm what 43 empty seats in Vancouver have already told us? Because I keep returning to this place. In this tale, every individual and every company had the same trajectory. A quiet, well-managed departure at the end, closeness in the middle, and enthusiasm at the beginning. Spotify, Netflix, William Morris Endeavour, Jessica Mulroney, Jason Canales, the Beckhams, and 18 senior employees. At some point, you stop asking what went wrong in each individual relationship and start asking what the common denominator is that unites them all, because the pattern is so repetitive and consistent. And the answer is right there in the record, recorded by those closest to the subject, verified by the corporations that wrote the largest checks, and succinctly summed up by a man who said just one word before saving the best part of the tale for later.